Hi, my name is Wintana, and I'm one of the product management and technical instructors over here at Tech Herders in Seattle. You can also think of me as your product and AI coach. Today, I'm going to be walking you through how to navigate Codex. If you're intimidated by this tool, you really shouldn't be because I'm going to be showing you how to navigate it from 0 to 1. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm actually going to be using it for one of the very first times with you. Before I click on a single thing, I want to be very upfront about what this tool actually is, because I think it gets misunderstood a lot. Codex is not a chatbot. It's not something that you just talk to and it talks back. Codex is what we call an agentic coding tool. And what that means is that it can actually go into a project, write files, edit files, run commands, and hand you back something that works. So you can think of the difference between a chatbot and a coding agent, but as like the difference of asking somebody for directions versus handing somebody your keys and telling them to just drive us there. So a chatbot gives you the directions while Codex is the one driving you to your destination. And before we get started, I want to tell you something that nobody explained to me when I was just getting started, so I'm going to explain it to you. Codex is not just one application. OpenAI actually documents 5 separate services, and they all connect to the same account. So I'm going to be walking you through what each one actually is in their own words and the honest pros and cons for each. Because picking the right interface actually matters a lot more than what people think. So the first thing that we're going to be going through is Codex CLI, or the command line interface. So OpenAI's own description of this one is inspect, edit, and run code from your terminal. So the CLI is the version that has no buttons whatsoever. So it actually lives inside of something called a terminal, which is what we're seeing here on the screen. It's a plain window where you type in some commands and you do that instead of clicking around on some buttons to get the coding agent going. So to even install it, you have to paste a line into that terminal, and then you turn to Codex from inside of a project folder and you sign in with your ChatGPT account. So your very first message can be something as simple as tell me about this project, and their own guidance in OpenAI's words says to reach for the CLI when you're working from the terminal. So when you need scripting or automation, or when you want a local code review before you commit your code, or even when you want to hand off something to the cloud. The pros is that it's the most direct way to work with Codex, since it's sitting right next to your actual project files. And this is actually what a lot of engineers do to get a lot of their day-to-day work done. But also, on the very real side, one of the cons is that they don't have any visuals and there's no buttons. So if you've never opened a terminal before, or if you're not technical, this is really going into the deep end for you. The next thing that we're going to be covering is the Codex IDE extension. So OpenAI describes this as building with the context already in your editor. So just as a brief description, an IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. So what it basically means is that it's just the app that engineers write code in. So you can think of IDEs such as VS Code, Cursor, Windsurf, Xcode, or JetBrains. So the Codex extension, it adds a Codex sidebar right inside of that app. And it can automatically pull in whatever file or code that you already have open. So their guidance is to use it when you're making focused edits, or when you're learning unfamiliar code, when you want to review changes right next to the source, or if you want to delegate a bigger task without leaving your editor. The pros are that you can see your code and Codex's suggested changes side by side, right in place. But the cons are that you need one of those editor apps installed first. And if you're not used to an IDE, or if you're not technical, or if you're not used to coding, the screen can look really busy. There's going to be a lot of folders, panels, tabs. So you're not looking for that, this might not be the interface that you want to use. The next one that we're going to be covering is the ChatGPT desktop app. So OpenAI's own description for this is your command center for complex work. So it's basically a standalone app where you can run several projects in parallel with one another. You can work with files, and you can keep long-running files and work moving in one place. You install it to your desktop, you sign in, and then you choose where to work, whether that's in a chat, a project, or a folder. And then you either pick ChatGPT or Codex for your first message. And OpenAI's guidance is to use this when you're coordinating several projects, or when you're creating and reviewing files, when you're using your browser and your computer all together, or even when you're scheduling reoccurring work. The pros are that this is the most visual guided option, and you don't need separate engineering software installed first. So it's going to be really good for my non-technical folks. The cons are that it's still a separate download, and it's a little bit newer, so some parts feel a little bit less settled in than others. The next interface we're going to be going over is ChatGPT on the web. So OpenAI describes this as research, analyze, and create in your browser. So to access it, all you have to do is go to chatgpt.com, sign in, and choose the work option. Make sure you're on work, this tab right here, and not in the chat tab. So this is going to help you for anything multi-step. Think research, documents, spreadsheets, presentations, or even code. So you start a new chat or a project, and then you send your first message describing the results that you want. OpenAI's guidance is to use this when you have a multi-step task, the work needs deeper reasoning, and it depends on your files and your tools, or if you need an actual file that you can review and share at the end. The pros for this is that there's zero installation needed. You can be working in the next 2 minutes from any browser, but the cons are that because it is browser-based, some of the deeper local file or terminal work is going to be better suited for the other surfaces. So basically can't create files on your own desktop since it is in the browser. Next thing we're going to be covering is the Codex Cloud. So OpenAI's description of this is run coding tasks in parallel cloud environments. So this one is going to be for delegating. You connect to GitHub repository, you set up an environment, you describe the task, and Codex is going to run it in an isolated cloud environment while you're doing something else. So you're basically going to come back to a summary, and it's going to ask you for follow-up changes or even a pull request. And OpenAI's guidance is to use this when the work needs to run in the background, when you need to compare multiple attempts at once, or if the work actually started in GitHub, Linear, or Slack, or even if you're just away from your main computer. The pros are that you can actually do real parallel work, multiple things at the same time, and it already plugs into the tools and systems that your teams are probably already using. The cons are that it assumes that you already have a GitHub repository connected, which is a lot more setup than what a total beginner is going to be needing on day one. So with all of that said, for today, I am going to be using the desktop app, and here's why. I want Codex to actually build files on my own desktop. So in the real folder that I choose, sitting on my computer, and not just in some cloud environment that I actually can't see in real life, right? So the desktop app is built for exactly that. It lets you open a folder and work with the files and context in that location. And this is what I would really recommend to any non-technical person using Codex for the first time. And it's because that this is the only surface where you get the real files on your own machine without needing a terminal or a complicated setup. Is by far the easiest and the simplest way to get up and running as a non-technical person using Codex for the first time. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and install this from scratch on camera so you see every little step. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is downloading the ChatGPT app. So there's a version for Mac OS as well as a version for Windows. So grab whichever one matches your computer. As you can see here, I'm going ahead and grabbing the Mac OS one. And as we can see here, it is going ahead and downloading. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and drag ChatGPT over to the applications folder. And just like that, we have ChatGPT installed on our desktop. So now that we have ChatGPT downloaded on our desktop, let's go ahead and open it up. So I'm just going to go ahead and search for it here. And just like that, ChatGPT is open. So let's go ahead and sign in. Phone number required. This is new. We'll do this off camera. And just like that, we are signed into the ChatGPT for Desktop app. So now that we're signed in, it's asking me, I can choose where I want to work. So I can either start a chat right here, or we can use this work tab, which is going to be the Codex work that we're going to be doing. So because I want to use Codex, we're going to be going ahead and clicking on this work tab because I want Codex working with real files sitting on my desktop. So let's go ahead and give Codex our first real task. So here's the structure that I'm using. I am doing my best to keep the task small enough to check in about every 20 minutes or less, preferably much less. And I'm going to be giving Codex 4 things: the goal, the context, any restraints, and what done looks like. Here's what I'm going to use for this first build. Build me a simple web page that greets me by name and shows today's date with clean styling. Nothing fancy. I've never written code before, so this is a first test of what you can do. Keep it small and focused. I'll know it worked when I can open the page and see it looking good. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and send this prompt and feel free to follow along with me. So it's saying this model, the GPT-5.6 Soul, is not supported when using Codex with a ChatGPT account. So let's just actually change the model. Let's try this again. Let's try 5.6 Tera and see what it says. So I'm going to actually do a new chat with 5.6 Tera and see if that works. Okay, cool. 5.6 Tera works on the ChatGPT desktop app with Codex. So we'll go ahead and do that. So as you can see, it's laying out a plan first, right? So first it's confirming that it's going to make a small self-contained page that asks for exactly what we typed in the prompt, right? Done It's already done. I was gonna narrate the whole process, but it already finished. Well, that's a good sign. I'm just gonna like open this up so you can see its thought process, but it's telling you exactly what it's gonna do, which is create a small web page, right? And then it edited a file as well as read some files. And just like that, the page was ready. It even did its quick checks and made sure it's all working. It worked for a total of 33 seconds and the web page is already built. Without further ado, let's actually test this out. And we are going to open this in Google Chrome, because why not? You can open it in ChatGPT in this little sidebar, but let's have it be a little bit legit, right? So let's open it up in Google Chrome. Okay, so it's saying hello. Today is Monday, July 27th, and type in your name. So it worked. Yay! Our test is complete. So it worked on the first try. What surprised me was that I actually had to custom put in my name. I thought it was just gonna like say hello Wintana automatically, but that is a good note for you always have to be as specific as possible with your prompts, right? So yeah, but honestly, this is not bad at all. This is even like more customizable, right? Because what if I'm using an account where my profile name is not accurate to like my legit name? So cool. Let's go back to the Codex interface. So to recap, Codex is an agent, not a chatbot. It plans, edits, and runs actual work, as we could see here. It built an actual web page for us, right? It didn't just respond with, here is your name, and here's a welcome greeting message. It actually built a web page that displayed all of these things. So OpenAI also documents 5 doors into Codex: the CLI, the IDE extension, the desktop app, web, and cloud. And which one you pick, it really just depends on how much setup that you want versus how much control you need. And to be honest, if you're a non-technical product manager, you haven't written a single line of code, or if you're just non-technical in general, haven't really worked with agentic coding tools, I would really recommend that you use the Codex desktop app as your entryway into using Codex. So in the next video, I'm going to be having Codex actually build me things that I would use as a product manager and as a job hunter, not just this little test. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.